The boy pointed at his stepdad and cried every time he saw him. But when his mother set up a camera in the room, she was stunned by what it revealed. The morning began like any other in apartment 3B of the Los Supras building. Anna was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast while humming softly, hoping to maintain a sense of normalcy in her life. The comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and toast filled the air, mingling with the gentle rays of sunlight streaming through the window. "Samuel, sweetheart, breakfast is ready," Anna called, carefully arranging a plate of pancakes topped with fruit into a cheerful, smiley face. Moments later, the sound of tiny footsteps echoed down the hallway. 4-year-old Samuel appeared in the kitchen, dressed in his dinosaur pajamas. His brown hair was slightly tousled, and his big brown eyes radiated the innocence of childhood. "Good morning, my love," Anna greeted him warmly, bending down to kiss his forehead. "Did you sleep well?" Samuel nodded quietly and climbed into his chair with the help of the little step Anna had placed for him. Though naturally a quiet child, his silence in recent weeks had taken on a heavier, more concerning tone. "Good morning to my favorite people," came a deep, cheerful voice from the hallway. Anna immediately noticed Samuel stiffen in his seat as Roberto, her husband, walked into the kitchen. Dressed for work in a crisp light blue shirt and dark pants, Roberto's warm smile lit up his face, emphasizing the faint wrinkles around his eyes. At 38, he still carried a youthful energy despite his serious role as an accountant. "Hey, champ," Roberto said, his tone full of affection. But before he could finish his sentence, Samuel began trembling. The boy's tiny index finger rose, pointing directly at Roberto. Tears welled up in his eyes as he stammered, "No, no." His voice cracked, and sobs quickly followed. "Samuel, sweetheart, what's wrong?" Anna rushed to her son's side, alarmed by his reaction. It was the same heartbreaking scene that had unfolded repeatedly for the past 3 months. Samuel's fear of Roberto, with no clear explanation. Standing frozen at the kitchen door, Roberto's concern was evident as he watched the child's tearful outburst. Roberto hesitated, his smile faltering as he stood near the kitchen door. Maybe I should have breakfast later," he suggested softly, taking a step back. "No!" Samuel screamed, his cries escalating into inconsolable sobs. His trembling finger remained pointed directly at Roberto as tears streamed down his small face. Anna quickly wrapped her arms around Samuel, pulling him close. She could feel his tiny body shaking against hers. "Shh, it's okay, my love. It's okay," she whispered, her voice gentle and soothing. She glanced at Roberto, her eyes full of worry and confusion. "I'll see you later," Roberto murmured, his voice heavy with concern. Grabbing his keys and briefcase, he left the kitchen. The soft click of the front door closing echoed through the apartment. Anna continued rocking Samuel back and forth, humming softly until his cries subsided into hiccups. She felt utterly helpless. This ongoing situation was tearing her apart. Just a year ago, she thought she had experienced the worst pain imaginable. Losing Carlos, her late husband, in a tragic car accident had left her shattered. The first few months after his death were a whirlwind of grief and confusion. She'd struggled to explain to her then 3-year-old son why his father would never come home again. Roberto had entered their lives like a beacon of hope during those dark times. Anna had met him at a small cafe where she often escaped during work breaks, searching for a moment of peace away from the suffocating weight of her memories. At first, his kindness and warm demeanor had been a comfort she hadn't realized she needed. But now, as she looked at her son's tear-streaked face, she questioned everything. Roberto was patient, understanding, and, most importantly, wonderful with Samuel. For months, everything seemed to be getting better. "Samuel, my love," Anna said softly, gently pulling her son back so she could look into his tearful eyes. "Can you tell Mommy what scares you?" Samuel shook his head, his eyes still glistening with tears. "Roberto is good to us, right? Has he ever done anything to scare you? Anna's voice was calm but tinged with concern. Samuel shook his head again, refusing to say more. Anna sighed, brushing the tears from his cheeks with her thumbs. You know you can tell me anything, don't you? Anything that worries or scares you? Samuel didn't answer her question. Instead, he simply murmured, I want to go to daycare. Anna's heart ached, but she decided not to press him further. The rest of the morning unfolded as it usually did. She bathed Samuel, dressed him in his cheerful little explorer's daycare uniform, and packed his bag with an extra change of clothes and his favorite snacks. As she drove to the daycare, Anna couldn't stop replaying the events in her mind. What had changed 3 months ago? Why did her son, who once laughed and played with Roberto, now seem so afraid of him? Good morning, Mrs. Gonzalez, greeted Maria, the daycare's head teacher, as Anna and Samuel arrived. Maria, a kind, middle-aged woman with a warm smile and keen, observant eyes, had always been a reassuring presence. Hello, Samuel, Maria said warmly, as the boy quietly joined his friends in the play area. Maria, could we talk for a moment? Anna asked, her voice laced with worry. In the small office of the daycare, Anna poured out her concerns to Maria. As she spoke, Maria listened attentively, occasionally jotting down notes in her notebook. To be honest, Anna, Maria began after a moment, Samuel behaves perfectly normal during the day. He plays with his friends, participates in activities, eats well. He's a sweet and social child. Anna frowned, unsure what to make of that. Have you noticed anything unusual? Anything he's said or done that seems out of the ordinary? Maria shook her head thoughtfully. Nothing that's caught my attention. After a brief pause, Maria added gently, have you considered consulting a child specialist? Sometimes children express their emotions in ways that can be hard to interpret, and a professional might be able to help. Anna nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. She knew she needed to get to the bottom of this for Samuel's sake. Sometimes children process grief in ways we, as adults, can't fully understand, Maria had said, her voice gentle but firm. Anna nodded distractedly. She had already taken action and scheduled an appointment with Dr. Patterson, a child psychologist recommended by Samuel's pediatrician, for the following week. But the waiting felt endless, and the situation weighed heavily on her mind. At work, Anna struggled to concentrate. As an editor at a mid-sized publishing house, her job required a sharp eye and attention to detail. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Samuel and his terrified expression that morning. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Roberto. How's Samuel? Do you need me to pick him up from daycare? Anna felt a wave of guilt wash over her. Roberto had been nothing but kind, understanding, and patient, and yet doubts had begun to creep into her heart, uninvited. I'll pick him up, but thanks, she replied quickly, her fingers hovering over the screen for a moment before she put the phone away. The rest of the afternoon crawled by. Anna left work early to pick Samuel up from daycare. As she arrived, he greeted her with a bright smile, holding up a drawing he'd made and excitedly telling her about how he'd shared his cookies with his best friend, Lucas. For a brief moment, everything seemed perfectly normal. But that illusion of normalcy shattered when they got home. Roberto was in the living room, seated on the couch, reviewing some work documents. He smiled warmly when he saw Samuel, his voice soft and cautious. Hey, buddy. Samuel froze, his cheerful demeanor vanishing in an instant. Without a word, he hid behind Anna's legs, his small finger once again pointing at Roberto as tears began to fall. Samuel, please, Anna pleaded, her voice trembling. She glanced at Roberto and saw the pain in his eyes. Roberto won't hurt you. You know that. But her words did little to comfort the boy. He broke down into inconsolable sobs before bolting to his room and slamming the door behind him. That night, Anna brought Samuel's dinner to his room. He refused to leave while Roberto was home, eating quietly at his small desk instead. As Anna tucked him into bed, the little boy seemed calmer, though his face still carried traces of his earlier distress. "My love," Anna whispered, sitting beside him and stroking his soft hair. "You know I love you more than anything in the world, right?" Samuel nodded, his eyes growing heavy with sleep. "And you know I would never ever let anyone hurt you, don't you?" Another nod. "Then why do you cry when you see Roberto?" Anna's voice was barely audible, her heart pounding as she waited for his answer. The silence stretched so long and so deep that Anna thought Samuel had drifted off. But just as she was about to stand, his tiny voice broke the stillness. In a barely audible whisper, Samuel said the words that froze Anna's blood. "The bad man comes." "When you're not here, Mommy," Samuel whispered. Anna felt her world come to a standstill. Her heart began pounding so loudly she could hear it echoing in her ears. What did those words mean? What was happening when she wasn't home? A storm of questions flooded her mind, each one more unsettling than the last. She stayed by Samuel's bedside until his breathing slowed and became deep and steady, signaling he had finally fallen asleep. In the dimly lit room, she watched her son's face, so serene in sleep, so unlike the fear he showed during the day. It was a heartbreaking contrast. Quietly, Anna left the room, carefully closing the door behind her. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, sliding down to the floor as her composure broke. The tears she had been holding back all day flowed freely now. Silent sobs racked her body as the weight of her fears and unanswered questions pressed down on her. Minutes later, Roberto found her sitting there. "Anna," he said gently, but she held up a hand to stop him. "I need time to think," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She didn't look at him. "Please." That night, lying in bed beside Roberto, who slept soundly, Anna stared at the ceiling. Her mind replayed Samuel's words over and over like a broken record. She couldn't live like this anymore, consumed by doubt and fear. She had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Her resolve hardened, and she made a decision. Tomorrow she would buy a security camera. The next morning, Anna's reflection in the bathroom mirror revealed the toll of a sleepless night. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, evidence of the restless hours she had spent haunted by her thoughts. At breakfast, Roberto looked at her with concern. "Are you sure you don't want me to stay home today?" he asked as he buttered his toast. Samuel hadn't left his room yet, the silence in the house feeling heavier than usual. "No, go to work," Anna replied, absently stirring her coffee. She hadn't taken a sip. "I called my mother. She's coming to watch Samuel today." The lie tasted bitter, but Anna knew she needed this day alone. She needed answers. Roberto nodded, his expression soft and understanding as always. He leaned in to kiss her, but Anna couldn't help the way her body tensed slightly. "I love you," he murmured. "We're in this together, okay?" Anna nodded weakly as he left. She waited until she heard the sound of the car pulling out of the driveway before making her way to Samuel's room. The boy sat cross-legged on his bed, clutching his favorite dinosaur plush toy to his chest. His wide eyes looked up at her as she entered. "Good morning, my sky," Anna said, smiling as she sat on the edge of his bed. "Are you hungry?" Samuel's response came in a hesitant whisper, his small hands tightening around the plush toy. "Is he gone?" "Is he gone?" Samuel asked in a low, hesitant voice. "Yes, my love, he's gone," Anna reassured him gently. The change was instant. Samuel's small shoulders relaxed and a faint smile appeared on his face. "Can we have pancakes?" he asked, his tone suddenly bright and cheerful. During breakfast, Anna watched her son closely. It was like he was two completely different children, one frightened and trembling whenever Roberto was present, and the other happy and talkative when he wasn't. "Mommy, am I not going to daycare today?" Samuel asked as syrup dripped down his chin. "No, sweetheart," Anna replied, wiping his face with a napkin. "Today we're staying home. Mommy has some important things to do." After breakfast, Anna set Samuel up in the living room with his favorite toys before retreating to her bedroom. Locking the door, she opened her laptop and began researching security cameras. For over an hour, she read reviews, specifications, and comparisons, finally settling on a discreet yet reliable model. The camera was small enough to hide among Samuel's stuffed animals and could stream live footage directly to her phone. "Samuel," she called, stepping out of her room. "Do you want to come with Mommy to run some errands?" The electronics store was a 20-minute drive away. As Anna drove, her mind raced with possibilities. What if something awful was happening? What if it was all just Samuel's imagination? What if she was wrong to suspect Roberto and was breaking his trust without cause? "Mommy?" Samuel's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Are you sad?" Anna was startled to realize a tear had slipped down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away. "No, my love. I'm just thinking." "Are you thinking about Daddy?" he asked softly. The question hit Anna like a punch to the stomach. Carlos. What would he think of all this? "Sometimes," she admitted, her voice heavy. "Do you think about him?" she asked, glancing at her son in the rearview mirror. Samuel nodded, staring out the window. "Lucas has a dad who takes him to the park. I used to have one too." Anna gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Yes, my love, you had the best dad in the world." At the electronics store, Anna felt like she was doing something wrong, like she was buying evidence to uncover a crime. The young salesperson, a polite man with an awkward smile, explained how the camera worked. "It's very discreet," he said. "Ideal for keeping an eye on nannies, cleaning staff, or anything else. Or your partner," Anna thought bitterly, though she didn't say it out loud. Back home, while Samuel napped, Anna set up the camera. She positioned it between a teddy bear and a stuffed elephant, angling it to capture the entire room, including the door and Samuel's bed. She tested the app on her phone, which displayed a crystal-clear image. As she finished, her phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Patterson, confirming their appointment for next week. Anna quickly replied before her eyes fell on her phone's home screen. A photo of her, Roberto, and Samuel smiling together at an amusement park. They looked so happy that day. "What am I doing?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Sitting on the edge of Samuel's bed, Anna gently stroked his cheek as he slept. His small face was peaceful, though he frowned slightly in his dreams. She remembered how simple life had been when he was a baby, sleeping soundly in her arms for hours. Everything felt so much easier then. The rest of the afternoon passed in a strange calm. Anna and Samuel baked cookies, watched cartoons, and built castles with his building blocks. For a moment it was easy to pretend that everything was normal, that they were just a mother and son enjoying a peaceful day together. But as the sun began to set and the time for Roberto's return drew closer, Anna's anxiety returned in full force. "Samuel," she said gently as they tidied up his toys, "would you like to sleep in Mommy's room tonight?" His eyes lit up with excitement. "Really?" "Yes," Anna said with a smile. "We can make a fort with sheets and tell stories." Samuel hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do I have to sleep in my room?" The innocence of the question made Anna's stomach churn. "No, my love," she assured him. "You don't have to sleep in your room." When Roberto came home that evening, he found Anna and Samuel curled up on the living room sofa, watching a movie. Samuel immediately tensed, his small body pressing closer to Anna's side. "I brought pizza," Roberto announced cheerfully, lifting a box. "Pepperoni, your favorite, Samuel." But Samuel didn't respond. He stayed silent, clinging to Anna. "Samuel will sleep with me tonight," Anna said quietly, her voice firm. "Tonight," Anna said, keeping her tone neutral. "We're having a camp out in my room." Roberto nodded slowly, concern evident on his face. "Sure, that sounds fun. Would you like me to join you?" "No!" Samuel shouted suddenly, his trembling finger pointing at Roberto. "No! No! No!" Anna stepped in quickly, wrapping her arms around Samuel. "I think it's better if it's just the two of us," she said softly, holding him close. That night, as Samuel slept soundly in Anna's king-sized bed, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. In the next room, she could hear the faint sounds of Roberto moving around, likely working on his laptop as he often did when he couldn't sleep. Her phone rested beside her pillow, the camera app open but quiet. Tomorrow, the surveillance would begin. And with it, the search for the truth, no matter how painful that truth might be. "Please," she whispered into the darkness, though she wasn't sure whom she was praying to. "Please, let me be wrong." The next morning, Anna walked into the publishing house with an extra-large coffee in hand. The dark circles under her eyes were more pronounced than ever. "Good morning, Paula," she greeted her assistant, forcing a tired smile. "Any news?" Paula asked, falling into step behind her. "The 10ec meeting was canceled," Paula added as they reached Anna's office. Then, lowering her voice, she asked, "Are you okay? You look exhausted." Anna dropped into her chair with a sigh. "I didn't sleep well," she admitted. "Is Samuel still—" Paula trailed off, not wanting to press too hard but clearly aware of the ongoing situation. "Worse," Anna replied, turning on her computer. Just then, her phone lit up with a notification. The camera she had installed was working perfectly. "Actually, Paula," Anna began hesitantly, "I need a huge favor." "Of course," Paula said without hesitation. "If anyone asks, especially Roberto, just say I had an important meeting with an author that couldn't be rescheduled." Paula frowned, confused, but the meeting was canceled. "I know," Anna said, lowering her voice. "I'll be at the cafe across the street. I need to check on something." Paula sat down in the chair across from Anna, her expression serious. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" For a moment, Anna considered telling her everything. The camera, her suspicions, the fear that had been gnawing at her for weeks. But how could she explain that she was spying on the man who had helped her rebuild her life? "I'm fine," Anna lied, forcing a weak smile. "I just need to sort some things out." At 9:30, Anna crossed the street to Café Paris, a quaint little spot with a clear view of her office. She chose a corner table where no one could see her screen. "The usual, Miss Anna?" asked Marco, the waiter who had served her countless times since Carlos's death. "Yes, please. And maybe some croissants," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. Once Marco left, Anna opened the camera app on her phone with shaky hands. The live feed showed Samuel's room, empty and bathed in soft morning light. His toys were still neatly arranged, just as they had left them the night before. "Here you go," Marco said, placing a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. "Expecting someone?" "No," Anna replied quickly. "I have some work to do." The next few hours dragged on painfully. Anna alternated between editing documents on her laptop and nervously checking the camera feed. She knew Roberto had dropped Samuel off at daycare earlier that morning and would pick him up at noon. At 12:15, the door to Samuel's room opened. Anna almost spilled her third cup of coffee in her rush to check the feed. "Everything okay?" Marco asked, concerned. Yes, Anna said quickly. Could I get a glass of water?" On the screen, Roberto and Samuel entered the room. The boy stayed close to the doorway, his small body tense, but he didn't cry. Perhaps because he knew his mother wasn't home. "Wanna have lunch together, champ?" Roberto's voice came through the camera's microphone, clear and warm. Samuel shook his head firmly. "Come on, I made your favorite. Chicken nuggets," Roberto said gently, trying to coax him. "I want mommy," Samuel whispered, his voice barely audible. Anna's heart clenched as she watched through the camera feed. Was she doing the right thing? Shouldn't she be home, protecting her son, instead of sitting at a cafe spying from afar? The hours dragged by, each moment filled with an unsettling normalcy. Roberto kept his distance, trying to interact with Samuel but respecting his space. He brought lunch to Samuel's room, asked if he wanted to watch TV, and even offered to play with his toys, but Samuel refused every time. Eventually, Roberto left him alone to play. At the cafe, Marco approached Anna's table. "Need anything else?" he asked kindly. Anna glanced at her watch. It was almost 4 p.m. "No, She paused, her breath hitching. On the screen, Roberto had just entered Samuel's room again. "Wait, yes. Another coffee, please." Her heart raced as she watched Roberto walk toward Samuel's wardrobe. Just then, her phone vibrated with an incoming call from Paula. No, Anna muttered, rejecting the call with shaking hands. When she returned to the camera app, Roberto had already left the room. Marco returned with her coffee, setting it down gently. "Sorry to intrude, but you've been here all day and you seem agitated. Are you sure you don't need me to call someone?" Anna looked up from her phone, meeting Marco's concerned gaze. For a moment, she considered brushing him off, but the weight of her emotions was too much to hold back. "I'm watching someone," she admitted quietly, her voice trembling. "Through a camera." Marco blinked in surprise but didn't judge. Instead, he pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "Can I ask why?" Anna hesitated, her throat tightening. "My son..." She struggled to get the words out. "My son cries every time he sees my partner. He says..." Her voice broke, but she forced herself to continue. "He says the bad man comes when I'm not here." Marco's expression softened with empathy. "And you think..." "I don't know," Anna admitted, running a hand through her hair. "Roberto has been nothing but wonderful to us. He helped me rebuild my life after Carlos died. He's patient, kind, and loving. But Samuel, he's terrified of him. And I don't know why." Marco nodded thoughtfully. "Have you considered talking directly to your partner?" "What if I'm wrong?" Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. "What if I'm destroying everything for nothing?" "What if you're not?" Marco replied simply, his words hanging heavily in the air. On her phone screen, Samuel was sitting on the floor, quietly playing with his building blocks. At 5:30, Anna received a text message from Roberto. "What time will you be home? I was thinking of ordering Chinese food." With trembling fingers, Anna replied, "On my way. Order the usual." "You're leaving?" Marco asked as Anna began gathering her things. "I have to get back to reality at some point, right?" she replied with a weak smile. Marco stopped her before she could stand. "Miss Anna, if you need help or just someone to talk to, we're here. All of us who've known you since Carlos." Tears welled up in Anna's eyes. "Thank you, Marco." The drive home was a whirlwind of emotions. Tears blurred Anna's vision, forcing her to pull over more than once. Samuel's words echoed in her mind. "The bad man comes when you're not here, Mommy." When she finally arrived, Anna found Roberto and Samuel exactly as she had seen them on the camera feed, sitting on the bed together, a photo album open between them. "Roberto," Anna said softly, her voice almost a whisper. Both Roberto and Samuel looked up, Samuel's cheeks tear-streaked, and Roberto's expression a mixture of guilt and sadness. "I think," Anna began, stepping into the room slowly, "we need to talk." The tension was thick as Anna stood in the doorway, her eyes darting between Roberto and Samuel. Photo album lay open on the bed, revealing a picture Anna instantly recognized. Carlos holding a newborn Samuel at the hospital. "Samuel, sweetheart," Anna said gently, approaching the bed as if trying not to startle him. "Could you go see Mrs. Martha for a little while?" Mrs. Martha, their neighbor from 3A, had always been a kind and reliable presence in their lives. More than once, she'd been their lifeline in moments like this. Samuel looked at his mother with tearful eyes, then at Roberto, and finally at the photo album. "Are you going to make him go away?" he whispered. "Who, my love?" Anna asked gently. "The man who brings Daddy," Samuel replied, his voice trembling. Anna felt her heart stop for a moment. Roberto let out a sound that was part sigh, part sob. "No, sweetheart," Anna said, kneeling beside the bed. "I just need to talk to Roberto for a moment. Can you be a brave boy and go to Mrs. Martha's? She has those chocolates you like so much." After ensuring Samuel was safe with their kind neighbor, Anna returned to the room. Roberto hadn't moved, his hand still resting on the photo album as though it were a fragile treasure. "Since when?" Anna asked, sitting down on the small chair by Samuel's desk. "Anna, Roberto began, hesitating. "Since when?" she repeated firmly. Roberto sighed, closing the album with deliberate care. "Since the beginning," he admitted. "Since he started crying whenever he saw me." Roberto ran a hand over his face. "At first I thought he was afraid of me, that I had done something wrong. But one day, while tidying up his room, I found this." He gestured to the album. Anna's eyes widened as she recognized it. She had packed the album away after Carlos's funeral, unable to look at it without breaking down. "Samuel must have taken it out," Roberto continued. "Why didn't you tell me?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. "What was I supposed to say?" Roberto looked at her directly, his tone tinged with frustration. "Hey, Anna, I found your late husband's photo album and showed it to your son when you weren't home." "Yes," Anna stood abruptly, her frustration bubbling over. "That's exactly what you should have said instead of letting me—" She stopped herself mid-sentence. "Letting you what?" Roberto's voice softened as he gazed at her with understanding. "Letting me think that I was hurting Samuel," Anna finished, her eyes filling with tears. They streamed freely down her face as she confessed, "I installed the camera in his room. I've been watching you." Roberto offered a sad smile, his expression tinged with understanding. "I saw it this morning when I was putting away some toys. At first I was shocked, but then I understood. You're a mother protecting your child." Anna sank back into the chair, exhausted. "Why does he cry when he sees you?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Roberto reopened the album, flipping through the pages with care. "Because I remind him of his father, not in how I look, but in what I do. The first time I showed him these photos was after a particularly hard day. He was crying, saying he missed his dad. I found the album and thought it might help to show him the pictures. At first it worked. He smiled and even asked me to tell him stories about the photos." Roberto paused, his voice thick with emotion. "But then he started associating me with those moments. Every time he saw me, he knew I was the one who brought back the memories of his dad. And that made him cry." Anna moved to sit beside him on the bed. She took the album and opened it to the first photo, a picture of Carlos at the beach, holding a laughing 2-year-old Samuel as waves splashed their feet. "Do you tell him stories about these photos?" she asked. Roberto nodded. "As many as I can remember. Sometimes I add little details to make him smile. But, you didn't know Carlos?" Anna's voice was a mixture of confusion and sadness. A heavy silence fell over the room. Roberto stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "There's something I need to tell you," he said after a moment. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Before he could continue, a knock at the door interrupted them. "Anna, dear," Mrs. Martha's familiar voice called. "Samuel is asking for you. He's a bit anxious." "I'll be right there," Anna replied, her eyes still on Roberto. "What were you going to tell me?" she asked, her voice steady but full of anticipation. Roberto glanced at the album, then at Anna, and finally toward the door where Samuel was waiting. He took a deep breath. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to find Samuel first. This is a conversation we all need to have together." A chill ran down Anna's spine, as she nodded and moved toward the door, unsure of what revelation awaited her. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. What secret was Roberto keeping? What connection could he possibly have to Carlos that she didn't know about? When they went to get Samuel, they found him sitting on Mrs. Martha's couch, eating chocolate cookies and drawing. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" Anna asked as she sat beside him. Samuel held up his drawing. It showed 4 figures, a woman, a child, and 2 men, one partially erased. "It's us," he explained. "You, me, Roberto, and—" His voice wavered. "Daddy." Roberto approached cautiously. "Samuel, can I sit with you?" The boy nodded hesitantly, though his small hands trembled slightly. "Do you know why you cry when you see me?" Roberto asked gently. Samuel nodded again. "Because you bring Daddy in the pictures. And it hurts here." He pointed to his chest. Anna's heart broke even more as she realized the pain her little boy had been carrying silently. "And why do you point at me?" Roberto continued. Samuel looked at his mother, then at Roberto. "Because I don't want Mommy to be sad when she sees the pictures, like before." Anna's breath hitched as she remembered the months after Carlos's death, when she had broken down every time she saw a photo of him. She had packed the album away, unable to face the memories. "My love," Anna said, pulling her son into a hug. "I don't get sad when I see pictures of Daddy. I'm happy to remember him." "Really?" Samuel asked, his voice filled with hope. "Really," Anna assured him. She glanced at Roberto. "In fact, I think Roberto has something important to tell us about Daddy." Roberto visibly tensed. "Anna, I don't know if this is the right time." "It's the perfect time," she insisted. "No more secrets, no more fears." Mrs. Martha, who had been quietly working in the kitchen, stepped into the room. "Would you like some hot chocolate? Important conversations are always better with hot chocolate." Minutes later, they sat together in Mrs. Martha's living room, steaming mugs of hot chocolate in their hands. Roberto took a deep breath. "Samuel," he began, "would you like to see a picture that isn't in the album?" The boy looked at him curiously as Roberto pulled out his wallet and retrieved an old, worn photograph. Anna leaned in for a better look and felt her breath leave her lungs. The photo showed 2 young university students smiling at the camera. One of them was unmistakably Carlos. "Is that—" Anna's voice trailed off. "Yes," Roberto said, his smile tinged with sadness. "Carlos and I at university. We were best friends." The silence that followed was deafening. Anna's hands shook as she held her mug of hot chocolate. "Best friends," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Samuel stared at the photograph, his small finger gently touching the image of his father. "Daddy looks happy," he said innocently. "He was," Roberto replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Your dad was always smiling, always making everyone laugh." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Anna's voice had an edge to it now. "All this time." Mrs. Martha, sensing the tension, intervened gently. "Samuel, dear, would you like to see the baby chicks that hatched on my balcony?" The boy looked at his mother, who gave him a slight nod. He followed Mrs. Martha out to the balcony. "Explain," Anna demanded as soon as Samuel was out of earshot. Roberto sighed deeply. "I met Carlos in our first year of university. We were roommates. He was studying architecture, and I was studying accounting. We couldn't have been more different, but—" "I don't care about your friendship story," Anna interrupted. "I want to know why you came into my life pretending to be a stranger." "I wasn't pretending, Anna," Roberto said, running a hand through his hair. "After university, Carlos and I took different paths. He stayed in the city and I moved abroad for work. We kept in touch, but it wasn't the same." "When was the last time you spoke?" Anna asked. 2 days before the accident." Roberto's voice broke. "He called me. He was worried about his business trip. He said he had a bad feeling. Anna felt her world tilt. She remembered that trip. Carlos had been unusually restless, spending hours playing with Samuel, as though trying to store up enough memories for a lifetime. He made me promise something, Roberto continued, his voice barely above a whisper. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would take care of you. What? Anna asked, her voice cracking. Roberto reached into his wallet again and pulled out a folded, worn piece of paper. His last letter. He wrote it that night. Anna took the paper with trembling hands. Carlos's familiar handwriting filled the page, a painful reminder of what she had lost. The letter read, "Dear Roberto, if you're reading this, it means my gut feeling was right. There's so much I want to say, so much I need you to know. Anna is the strongest woman I've ever met, but even the strongest need support. And Samuel, my little Samuel, will need a role model, someone to tell him stories about his dad, someone to keep my memory alive in the right way. I don't ask you to take my place. No one could. I only ask you to take care of them. Be there for them." Anna's tears fell freely as she finished the letter. Roberto sat silently, his gaze fixed on the floor. "All this time," Anna whispered, "you were keeping this from me?" "I didn't know how to tell you," Roberto admitted. "I didn't want you to feel like I was intruding on your life." Anna looked at the letter again, her emotions swirling. "We need to tell Samuel," she finally said. "I agree," Roberto said quietly. Anna stood clutching the letter tightly. It was time for the truth. "You are the only person I trust with this," Carlos had written. "Don't tell them about our friendship right away. Let them know you for who you are, not just your connection to me. When the time is right, you'll know when to tell them. Thank you for being the best friend a man could ask for." Tears streamed down Anna's face, staining the paper. She clutched it tightly, her voice trembling as she asked, "Is that why you showed up at the cafe?" Roberto's expression softened. "I had been watching from afar, making sure you were okay. When I saw you at the cafe that day, I knew it was time to approach." "Was everything planned?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Our meeting, our relationship?" "No," Roberto said firmly, kneeling in front of her and taking her hands in his. "My promise to Carlos was to take care of you, to be there if you needed me, falling in love with you. That wasn't planned. It was real, Anna, every moment." From the balcony, Samuel's laughter mixed with the soft chirping of the chicks, a gentle reminder of the boy they both cared for deeply. "The photos," Anna said suddenly, realization dawning on her. "That's why you knew all the stories." Roberto nodded. "Some of them I lived. Others, Carlos told me. When I found the album in Samuel's closet, I knew it was my chance to keep Carlos's memory alive." "But you did it in secret," Anna said, her voice breaking. "Because I didn't know how to tell you," Roberto admitted. "How do you explain that the man you're dating was your late husband's best friend? That he's here because of a promise?" Anna's eyes searched his face as she asked the question that had been lingering in her heart. "Is it just because of the promise?" Roberto met her gaze without hesitation. "No, the promise brought me here, but I stayed because I love you, you and Samuel. You're my family now." "Mommy?" Samuel's small voice interrupted them. Both turned to see him standing in the doorway, cradling one of the chicks gently in his hands. His wide eyes flicked between Anna and Roberto. "Why are you crying?" Anna quickly wiped her tears and opened her arms. "Come here, my love. There's something you need to know about Roberto and Daddy." Samuel approached cautiously, placing the chick back into its box before climbing onto Anna's lap. "Is it something sad?" he asked hesitantly. "No," Anna said with a soft smile, surprised to realize the truth of her words. "It's something special." She stroked Samuel's hair gently and continued. Do you remember how Daddy used to say that true friends are like stars? Even if you don't see them, they're always there? Samuel's face lit up as he recited the familiar phrase, even if you don't see them, they're always there. Exactly, Anna said, kissing the top of his head. And it turns out Daddy had a very special star. His name was Roberto.